My number three is Gone Girl from 2014, directed by David Fincher, written by Gillian Flynn, starring Ben Affleck, Rosamund Pike, Neil Patrick Harris, Carrie Coon, bunch of other folks, Tyler Perry. Quick log line: with his wife's disappearance having become the focus of an intense media circus, a man sees the spotlight turn on him when it's suspected that he may not be innocent. So before we kind of go in the depth of it, but this movie for me is kind of that, grown up friend experience of
Hmm.
watching this movie with a friend, and just obviously it's an amazing movie and we'll get into that, but just totally flabbergasted by the reactions of other people in the theater, my friend included, and my own, and the complicated emotions and feelings that brought up. And that's why this movie will always kind of live in my mind, just for being an amazing Fincher film, but
Hmm.
also just for how my friend reacted to this movie and how other people reacted, which is not how I was reacting, and we'll get to that. But curious, I'm sure you've seen this movie before, but curious of your relationship with this movie. Did you watch it with a bunch of people or alone, or yeah?
Yeah, so I'd seen the film, saw it first theater in theaters opening weekend. I had not read
Mm.
the book. I didn't know anything about it. And this movie definitely has, I think, two big twists in the film, or two
Yep.
shocking moments that I was definitely gasping along with the entire rest of the theater of like, holy, at these two things. So it's and that again is something that is fun about sharing that experience. If you're home alone and you're watching it, yeah, I'm sure you could still be like, oh no, but there's something about turning to someone next to you and be like, oh my God, like that just happened, or hearing all these other people just as shocked as you are at those two moments in the film, that is just what makes it so great. And I'll never also forget seeing this film in a theater, and
Mm.
seeing just the audience reaction to it. And yeah, as a film, I think this has only grown in my love of this
Mhm.
film and appreciation for it the more and more times I see it. I think it's like one of Fincher's best movies. Definitely the best thing he's done in the last 10 years. It's just really just a incredibly well crafted film, and the perfect thing for his sort of sensibilities. It's just fantastic. I really really love this movie. But I'm curious to hear about more of your your experience.
Yeah, no. So yeah, like you said, it's brilliantly mounted, brilliantly crafted across the board, as one would expect from all Fincher movies. And we're
Hmm.
watching this movie with me and a close friend of mine, and edge of your seat, you're totally engrossed in the story. Your head is going a million miles of what's happened, what may have been happening, blah blah blah. And the first big reveal, and spoiler alert, if people haven't watched this movie, with Rosamund Pike actually being alive, and
Hmm.
that's everybody gasps and everything, and we're all in kind of synchronously having that reaction across the board.
Right.
I think where things kind of really went off the rails for me was the way Neil Patrick Harris is
Yep. That's the
killed.
second moment. That's the second moment that
I
comes out of
mean,
nowhere. Yeah.
came out of nowhere, and my friend was actually along with a lot of other people, were they were in splits laughing out loud like
Mm.
crazy, and I was just completely horrified by what I just watched, but also horrified by the fact that people were laughing at this.
Mm. Hmm.
And and it was a very complicated sort of moment, at least in my own head, of kind of anger and confusion about what had happened, but also how the people were reacting to it. And that's the thing: if I'd watched this movie by myself, none of this would have happened. It
Mm.
only made the experience richer.
Hmm.
But then as I watched this movie over and over again, I think that is the point. It's just so heightened and so over the top that it's okay that that actually elicits like a laugh out loud. Almost you're trying to kind of, I don't know, hide your own feelings and emotions about how ridiculous this is. And that's the only thing you can do, is actually laugh out loud. I get it now, but I didn't get that in the moment because I
Mm.
was just so horrified by it.
Yeah, no, that moment definitely is later on in the film. Yeah, she is still alive and goes back to an old boyfriend of hers who was obsessed with her,
Right.
and then she ends up kind of taking him to bed, so you think it's going to be like a love scene, and then all of a sudden, a knife comes, or a scissor or something, cuts his
Yeah.
throat, and blood just spews everywhere, like in Kill Bill or something. And it is because the rest of the movie is very sort of I don't want to say like realistic, but pretty grounded. It's like just
Yeah.
sort of a
Grounded.
psychological thriller. There's no violence or hints of it, at least at this extreme. And to see a death like that coming out of nowhere with so much blood, and the way that she is so sinister in her actions too, of like she no regret. Yeah, I'm gonna kill this
No,
guy. She kills him, whole like
cold.
watches him bleed out, blood going all over her. It is, I remember the entire audience being a mix of the same reactions you were talking about, of just shock, gasps, and then laughter too, which is a reaction that people can get at over the top
Mhm.
violence, gore, horror, and a lot of people laugh in horror films because you don't really know what else to do, and that's where the laughter comes from.
Right.
I can't remember honestly if I was more on the laugh side. I mean, definitely now I laugh when I see it, but not in the shock. Even though I know it's coming, you still sort of forget how
Totally.
gruesome it is, and then it does sort of come out of nowhere. And then you're also sort of laughing at her, just like she's so bad. And she's such
Yeah.
a manipulative villain in this. So you're kind of almost laughing at her success and how just evil this woman and twisted this woman is, that she'll just do this to this guy who, yeah, he was kind of a creep, but I don't know. It's something about seeing that is definitely something. I still laugh at that scene. It still is shocking every time I see it, because I've seen the movie maybe half a dozen times. I forget just how gory that is. That
Yeah,
scene.
and then not to mention the score, especially in that moment, those like blazing sort of horns
Oh yeah.
that kind of punctuate that whole sequence.
Mm-hmm.
It's you're reverberating with it. It's just
Mm-hmm.
so I still can't laugh at it, but at least now I you're right. I always forget that it's coming, even though I know somewhere that it is coming.
Right.
But yeah, this is like a genius movie in all departments. And I mean, we've now sort of moved past this whole who done it TV show
Mm-hmm.
renaissance that kind of went on for many years. But I think this is the movie that kind of started it, I think. And Gillian Flynn actually has, or Gillian Flynn, I should say, she's written the Sharp Objects one. I think
Oh
that she
right.
wrote that
Yes,
Amy
that's
Adams
true.
is a follow up to, to a twisted dark
Mm-hmm.
people and sort of societies and such. But yeah, I think this movie, that's the genius of it, is that it can be on the surface level fun, enjoyable, edge of your seat movie that is brilliantly crafted, brilliantly mounted, brilliantly acted, but then it also has a lot on its mind if you
Oh
want to
yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
go deeper. And this kind of central thesis of like who we are as people, and who do we present us to be to the
Right.
people that we are in a relationship with. It's about childhood trauma and how kind of that dictates our whole life. It's about the media circus and how that kind of runs wherever there's the carrot dangling.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole apparatus of kind of police and investigative work and journalism, it's a critique on all of that stuff. But then if that wasn't enough, the cherry on the cake, I think, is the brilliant casting of Ben Affleck, where
Incredible.
this
Yeah.
is sort of a portrayal of his own life in a way. Not that he's done any of these things, but his persona of who he might be and how people see him to be, and how that's kind of reflected and twisted at the same way. It's just so genius from head to toe.
Yeah, I mean, he can pull off the being sort of a smug ass, but you still kind of care,
Smarmy,
but you still kind of care about
carefree.
him. He
Yep.
can, I don't know, he's like sincere, but at the same time he's sort of like kind of a, yeah, smug and kind of arrogant.
Yeah.
And he can walk that line, which is what's so important in the first act of the movie, when you think, yeah, he was probably the killer, he's lying this whole time, he did kill his wife, because you don't really trust anything Affleck's saying.
No.
That's his persona. You see, like,
Yeah.
maybe you're kind of trying to get one over on me a little bit with your charm, but it ends up like working in the favor of the story. And you can draw a lot of allegories, like you said, to his real life too, in the sense of his relationships, especially that initial one with J-Lo that he had, did very much affect his career and his personal life.
Mhm.
And in the same way that in this movie, when he's with Amy, it definitely does change, him as well. Not that I'm trying to say that J-Lo was,
Right.
bad person or anything like that. And
No,
obviously
no,
I'm
no.
very
She's
happy they're
great.
back together
Yeah.
and all that sort of thing. But that thread is very interesting. But yeah, I think your point too on how you present yourself is, that's what makes that character of Amy so fascinating, because you sort of do feel
Yeah.
bad for her. Her whole life,
Oh,
she was
definitely.
the famous woman from this child's book of like the perfect life. Her parents were
Yeah.
authors, and she could never live up to that. So she kept trying
No.
to
And it's sort of a
pretend.
very loveless childhood. Like
Oh,
they've
totally.
essentially used her and used
Mm-hmm.
her persona, and she's a very sharp, capable person, has all the attributes of somebody who would be amazing. But but it shows that when you don't have this essential ingredient of love in your life,
Hmm.
it sort of haunts you. And then
Right.
you're trying to kind of portray and pretend to be or live up to the book character, I suppose, but
Yes.
also,
Right. Right.
constantly try to fill that void of love and somebody who can really match you in that sense. So,
Yeah.
and there's some truth to that, right? Like we do in the dating phase, for example, we present a certain image of who we are,
Mhm.
knowingly or unknowingly. And even if you might be in a relationship with somebody for decades or whatever, do you really fully know them? I think it asks some like
Right.
really deep questions about that.
Right, totally. I mean, do you even really know yourself? I mean, that's something that,
Also that.
but not that this movie talks about, but totally. And I think too, really with this movie, especially the last couple times I see it, like the ending just is probably one of the more chilling and horrifying movie endings of anything I've ever seen, where basically she traps
You're
Ben
talking about the
Affleck.
side dick, right? Just
Yeah.
to be
Well,
clear.
that is
Right.
amazing. Yeah. Ben Affleck's got it going on. Um, but that she traps him in a life that he doesn't want, in a loveless marriage. He can't get out of it, and she's basically taking the entire rest of his life away without killing him. Like he's not dead, but essentially
No.
his future is totally dead. Like he has no agency now over the entire rest of his life. He can't get out of this marriage that's going to now consume him. She's going to control him forever. And like I can't think of a movie with a more horrifying an ending than that.
No.
I'd rather be killed. If I was Ben Affleck, like just kill me at this point. Like why are you going through this? But she can't, because she needs him, because he's part of her, perfect life she's trying to portray to the
Yeah.
world.
And
It's
weirdly,
horrifying.
maybe he needs her too. I think that's why it's for the baby, perhaps, but I think there's something a lot deeper psychologically messed up that's going on
Mm,
because he is sort of he says it at one point, I'm just a mediocre guy. I
right,
think
right.
there's some truth there. Like he doesn't really have a future. And what else is he going to do? Or maybe he's just too lazy. I think it'll take a lot more to kind of restart your life. And he just thinks that, okay, let's just go with it, sort of thing. I don't think he fully even understands why he stays.
Yeah, yeah, true. I mean, he does mention the baby being part of it, but I think you're right. The reason why he was probably attracted to her and the life that she was able to build for them was because, yeah, he's super mid. He's just like an average
Yeah.
guy. And because she's sort of portraying this perfect, husband and wife, perfect family, perfect marriage. Oh, great. I'll just plug myself into that. And then I can sort of, punch above my weight with
Yeah.
the life that I could never have gotten on my own, because he came from like a middle class background, didn't really have, some crazy job prospects. She comes from a ton of money with like a trust
Yeah.
fund and all these sort of things. So I'm sure that was wrapped up in the reasons why he was with her initially. And obviously their marriage deteriorated over time for various different reasons that
Right.
don't necessarily have to do with that. But I think and which is why, he ends up cheating on her and sort of,
Right.
feeling like the marriage is kind of dead. But
Yeah. What
I
about
just
that part?
I feel so bad for him at the end of this movie, though. It's like, again, I'd be like, just kill me at this point. Like, I'd rather you kill me than to like drag me. I guess now he has a kid coming, so maybe he wants to be the father, which is what he did want. But yeah, this movie just is. Every time I see it, I'm like, this is just so good. And we should also call out her performance as well, of just absolutely incredible. I don't think she's ever kind of topped this, but it is one of the best performances I've seen in a film in the last 10 years, because she's able to first be like the victim, and then you have to understand why she's like this way, and then turn into this
Mhm.
total evil, like crazy person, again with that scene we were
Mhm.
mentioning earlier where she kills Neil Patrick Harris. But she has to pull off all of those things. It has to be believable, and you do believe this is the same woman, you
Yeah.
know
It's a very physical performance too.
yes, yes.
I do think, at least this time when I watched it again for this podcast, I don't know. I saw some of the 100 takes-ness of Fincher in her performance, but now that I'm thinking about it, I think that's also the point because
Mm,
she's such a rehearsed person. Like she's mapped this out in
mm,
her mind for who knows how long, and her whole life is kind of this pretend rehearsed thing anyway because she's trying to kind of match up to something that doesn't exist. So maybe it's sort of meta in that sense, but
right.
and it's also so cold and so calculating that maybe that's the other reason why I sort of felt that I see the 100 takes
Mm,
here because it's just so perfectly mapped versus But it's a great juxtaposition to Ben Affleck, who just seems like he's just, walking through this movie. He's
Right.
just being himself.
Yeah,
Which
exactly.
is sort of the point, I guess. Like, she's just so meticulously planned and he isn't.
Right, exactly. Yeah, just one side note on the 100 takes and the audio commentary for this movie, when Fincher's talking about the scene when Neil Patrick Harris comes back to his house before he gets killed and pulls up and gets out of the car. He specifically says, just so you guys all know, this only took 2 takes. So all those people that complain about me taking 100 takes, literally F you. Like, he says that on the commentary track. And I thought of you. I was like, oh, he's talking to Karan right now. So just know that there is a scene in this movie that was only like 2 takes. So Neil Patrick Harris getting out of a car. Yeah, just
Thanks,
so you
Fincher.
know.
Brilliant.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.